This podcast is about introducing our fans to the animals, plants, and other products that we work with at Josh's Frogs. It's an opportunity to paint a picture of our hobby that is refreshing. We want you guys to be successful with the animals that you're keeping, and we want our hobby to grow ethically and sustainably into the future. Hello and welcome to the Josh's Frogs podcast. Today I got Jake with me. We're going to talk about Epipedobates. But before we do that, I just want to let you know that the Josh's Frogs podcast is brought to you by joshsfrogs.com. We're your one-stop shop for all your reptile, amphibian, and pet bug needs. We sell only captive bred animals, and then we also carry all the supplies you need to take care of them. So we do caging, we do lighting, we do substrates, we do heating, we do all that kind of stuff. We also carry live plants to turn that terrarium into a naturalistic terrarium. And then we also carry all the feeder bugs that you need to feed those animals. So from crickets to roaches to worms, all that stuff, we carry that here at Josh's Frogs. We also produce a lot of videos, how-to guides, blog articles, all that kind of stuff. We want you to be educated and informed when you're taking care of those animals. So we want to take care of you in that way. So check out all that information and check out joshsfrogs.com. And so without further ado, welcome, Jake. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do here at Josh's Frogs and how long you've been here?
Yeah, I'm Jake. I've worked here at Josh's Frogs now for 5 years, 1 month, and 19 days.
Wow.
So we've been here for a little while. And I spent the entirety of that time in the dart department, breeding all sorts of different dart frogs, kind of working my way up from like tadpoles to the adults. And I've worked with most of the dart frogs here. And right now I focus mainly on thumbnails, obligates, and Epipedobates, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
Cool. Talk to us, like pretend it's our uncle or aunt that don't know a lot about keeping dart frogs. Like what are some of the tasks that you do on like a weekly basis? Like give us some of those ideas of like when you do stuff and what days you do it and what are some of the tasks that you're doing.
Yeah, so our week is kind of broken down by day. I guess that's how a normal week is broken down by, but typically it'll go like Monday, Wednesday, Friday are feeding days.
Yep.
Tuesday for me is like a tadpole cleaning day and then collecting some eggs. And then Thursday is also some egg collecting as well with some various other tasks mixed in there. But basically keeping and breeding darts, it's a lot of feeding and it's a lot of cleaning. That's the majority of it, really. Okay.
Now we're talking about poison dart frogs. Are the frogs that you're working with dangerous and should people not keep them as pets because they're going to be poisonous?
Oh yeah, deadly, dude. Every day I'm risking my life for this job, but I love it, so that's what I do. But no, just kidding. Poison dart frogs in captivity are harmless. They get their toxicity from their diet as well as their environment. So basically what I always tell people who aren't familiar with darts is the insects they're eating in the wild, we'll just call them like spicy insects. They contain different alkaloids that the frogs will metabolize and use for their poison. But in captivity, the flies we feed them, the crickets, are not spicy. They don't contain any alkaloids, so the frogs are completely harmless. And in fact, if you take a wild dart from the wild and bring it into captivity, it'll actually lose its toxicity in just a few months. So dart frog, it's got that bold personality. I think it still thinks it's really poisonous.
Yeah.
But they're completely harmless.
Cool. All right, today we're going to talk a little bit about Epipedobates. Can you describe that frog? So, like, give us an idea on like size and what it kind of looks like, and then what are some of the kind of the morphs or locales of Epipedobates?
Yeah, so Epipedobates are obviously a type of poison dart frog, and where last time we talked about the thumbnails, which are the smallest in the genus Ranitimea. They get about 3/4 of an inch. These I would call medium-sized dart frog. They're not as big as the Dendrobates, the Philobates, but they're a bit larger than thumbnails, although they sometimes do get grouped in with thumbnails just for convenience sake, but they're not actually a thumbnail, but they'll get about maybe an inch and a half. And the main feature that at least the ones in that are common in captivity have in common is they'll have like a base color. So with the most common ones, the Santa Isabels, it's kind of like a cherry red color with 3 stripes, and the different localities will have different colored stripes, different base colors, but essentially they're relatively small, or I guess medium-sized dart frog.
Cool. And the other unique things that are unique to Epipedobates are some of the group mentality on those guys and some of how they breed much more regularly than some other dart frogs. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like how do we set them up here at Josh's Frogs, and what's their kind of breeding behavior like?
The main thing that you're looking for when you're picking your dart frog, or what you want, is, since the care is all the same, the things to really think about are The color.
Yep.
What color do you want? Do you want a big group or a pair?
Yep.
The call. Do you want the call to be loud and audible, or do you want it to be something that's quiet? Because if you have like a home office or whatever, you're working during the day, you might not want an Epipedobates like screaming at you all day, and things like that. So Epipedobates are interesting in that, like you said, they do well in pretty large groups. I'm sure you've seen it in the break room area. We have a huge tank. I don't know how many gallons it is. It's probably like 6 feet long.
Yep.
It's got like 50 plus Epipedobates in it, and they've got a whole group thing going on. Their call is quite loud, so if you like the calls, I would say that's another good option as well. And then one thing that's really cool about Epipedobates is most dart frogs can swim, but most of them are kind of mediocre at it. They don't have webbed feet, so they can swim, but they're pretty susceptible to drowning. Even if you have places for them to climb out of the water, they're at risk of drowning, which is why we don't recommend keeping them with water. But Epipedobates are actually really good swimmers, so we keep all of our tanks with a water section. And the way we raise those versus some other darts is typically with darts, we'll remove the eggs. When they hatch, we'll do the tadpole care. We'll raise them up all by hand. But Epipedobates will allow them to lay their eggs on leaves or on petri dishes. The male will carry them to a source of water like most darts. But because they're good swimmers, you can leave that water feature. And I think that's one really cool thing about them is people ask me, like, I want a paludarium. I want a water feature for my darts. I'm like, well, most darts maybe not the best for that, but if you want like a water feature, you want to do waterscape or whatever, Epipedobates is a good option.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the breeding process. So the male is calling, they're laying eggs, they're fertilizing them, he's transferring them to the water. About how long are they staying in the water? Is it similar to other dart frogs? And then it sounds like we're doing a lot of communal stuff. So they're staying together as tadpoles in the water dish. Is that a little bit different than some of the other dart frogs?
Yeah, so with pretty much all darts, the male's going to call, they'll have like a courtship ritual. Epipedobates are also unique in that most darts don't do amplexus, which is where like the male like kind of grabs the female, like I don't know, froggy style, if you will, and so that's kind of unique. And so they'll lay their eggs on petri dishes or leaves. The male will carry them to a source of water, which is pretty common in darts. And what was the other part of the question? Like
communal. Like they tend to not eat their brothers and sisters?
Yeah, with a lot of tadpoles, we keep them separate because they can be cannibalistic. That's a word. I remembered. Where the Epipedobates seem to do fine in big groups, so we'll just have water sections in our tanks with the one tank. Like all of our Epipedobates tanks are 100 gallons. Typically, we'll do like a 40-gallon tank with about 3/4 land, about 1/4 water, and the male will carry the tadpoles to the water. And then from there, the Epipedobates don't feed their babies with eggs like the obligates and some of the thumbnails do.
Yeah.
But they'll live in the water. They'll eat flies that fall in. They'll eat algae. But we also just throw in some Josh's Frogs tadpole food.
Cool. And how long are they tadpoles for? Is it similar to the other dart frogs?
I'd say it's pretty similar.
Cool. And then morphing out of the water, size-wise on those guys, how big are they coming out of the water, and what are we feeding them when they come out of the water?
They are pretty small. Epipedobates themselves are relatively small dart frogs. So the babies come out of the water fairly small. It depends how much food they get. Like if they're getting tons and tons of food, lots of protein, they'll come out of the water decent size. But at that size, springtails are really important for them, similar to thumbnails. It's an important part of their diet, so it's good to like kind of seed your tank with them every so often.
Cool. Now, with these guys, groups tend to be the norm. You can keep them in pairs, but most people tend to keep them in groups. What's a rule of thumb on like how many should I get with a size of tank? Like, what's some guidelines that you would give people to pick how many am I going to fit in this size of tank?
Let me do some math here.
Some calculation.
Got to carry the one. Yeah, I would say for like a 20-gallon tank, like 4 or 5 is probably pretty decent. And one thing about Epipedobates that we touched on briefly is they breed really readily. They're very prolific breeders. So if you get 4 or 5, your odds of having a pair is pretty high statistically, and you're going to end up with a lot of babies here pretty soon. So I would say that's a good starting point for like a 20. If it's a 40, maybe like 8.
Cool.
8 or 9.
Cool. Now, The Epipedobates tend, at least the Santa Isabels, tend to sex pretty evenly. In my experience, like, do you find that to be true? That most of the tanks, you guys aren't having to like, oh man, we got tons of females, no males. Does it tend to sex skew pretty evenly when it comes to those guys?
Yeah, I think it's pretty even.
Cool. If you had to rank Epipedobates as far as ease of care when it comes to dart frogs, where would you put them in that range? Would you say they're on the easy side, on the harder side? Where would you put them in that range?
Yeah, so when people ask me what are some of the best pet dart frogs, I always list kind of the main four: the Dendrobates, the dying arrow frogs, the bumblebees, the leucomellas, the green and blacks, the Eratus, and then the Phyllobates terribilis, the golden dart frog. And I lump Santa Isabels or Epipedobates in with those.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty decent. Like I mentioned before, they've got some qualities that make them a little bit more unique. Like if you want, let's say, like a red or the cherry red frog, that kind of gets rid of a few different, like there's not really any red Eratus.
Yeah.
So like, go through like your list of what you want. I want a red frog. I want a big group.
Yeah.
Like that already removes like quite a few other frogs.
Yep.
Like you've got Galax maybe, but
Yeah.
there's not too many red frogs. So I just think I think they're pretty easy to care for though. To answer your question, I think anybody could be successful with them.
Cool. I one of the things that I really like about them is just how prolific they are, which keeps their price really low. Like I think it's very, very accessible to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I mean if you were wanting to get into breeding frogs, I mean it really it's like just throwing food in and they do the rest. They're really, really, really prolific breeders.
Yeah. It is a unique experience to witness the different stages all together in one tank. So I know in our break room, you pop the lid, there'll be a male calling, trying to get some female to find him. You look through there a little bit and you'll find some eggs. And then very often in that 140 gallon, I'll be able to find a male that's transporting an egg often, or a tadpole very often. And then, of course, you look into the water and you wait for a few seconds, then you see some tadpoles. So you can see like all the stages of life happening right there at one time. And that's kind of a cool experience to have.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you'll basically see you got your males, your females, there'll be eggs all over the place. When you see the males carrying tadpoles, they'll typically try and carry the whole clutch at once. So those males like got the whole team on his back. He's got like 8 tadpoles attached to him down in the water. You'll see the tadpoles swimming in the water. You'll see froglets with tails climbing out of the water. It's just a really cool experience being able to see all that one life cycle in one tank.
Yeah. And I think like one of the things that I think people don't get as much experience with is how different every species or morph's call is. And like I just feel like Epipedobates, especially the Santa Isabels, just have a really, really, really pretty call. It's loud. It's not. I don't feel like it's leucomellis loud, but it's loud enough that like, hey, you could be in another room and you hear it going off, and it's one of the sounds that I just really enjoy. I love.
Yeah, that's one reason I love having them in my room. It's like a constant symphony of calls. Like it's a really loud, pretty high pitched trill. So again, if you want a frog that has a loud call that you can hear, that's a really good option.
Yeah, very, very pretty songy call. It's not a disturbing call. It's not like the barking of some of the tree frogs. It's really pretty.
And one thing with dart frogs is that they're diurnal. They're awake during the day. So if you're wondering like, oh, I want this frog, it has a nice call, but is this thing going to keep me up all night long? Like once the lights are off, the Epipedobates typically stop calling within, I don't know, 5-10 minutes.
Yep. It's hard to find a downfall for Santa Isabels. Like they're awake during the day. They have a pretty call. They breed really easily. They're really pretty frogs. It's hard to really come up with like, oh, okay, this is the one thing you got to keep in mind. They're just really easy to keep, really enjoyable type pet. So
I'd say the only thing I can really think of is there's not that many species out of the whole Epipedobates group, because it was originally made as like, we're getting into taxonomy. Like Dendrobates was like all the darts were Dendrobates.
Yep.
Then they split some into Phyllobates, like the golden dart frogs, and they threw a lot of ones that didn't really fit in either into Phyllobates. So they made Epipedobates to like split things up, and then they split that again into Amirga, and now I believe there's 7 species of Epipedobates. There's a lot of localities, but really the only 2 you'll find in captivity, as far as I know. Like I've never seen a Bowlangeri tricolor, but there's the Anthonii or the Santa Isabels that we've been talking about, and the tricolor. And there's a lot of really cool tricolors. There's Highlands, there's Solitos that we work with, but there's not a huge range as far as what's readily available that I've seen anyway.
Yep. It's almost hard to keep up on. I know I'm an old man now, and so like sometimes I'll in my mind like there's still this species, and I have to reteach myself. It's like I don't know.
You don't look a day over like 28.
It's hard for old people to keep up.
But no, I feel like taxonomy's
changes.
got to be a thankless job. It's like, hey guys, I did this genetic study, and now I found that like this frog is actually closer to this frog, so we can change this. Everybody's like, oh my, come on, dude. We just remembered this. You had to go and change it. It's got to be thankless work. If you're a taxonomist, appreciate your work.
Talk to me a little bit about toxicity when it comes to Epipedobates, and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Epipedobates toxicity is really interesting. It contains a compound known as epipetidine. I pronounced that correctly, which is like a pain-killing nicotine-like substance. They actually, for a while, were studying to use as a painkiller in humans because it's like, I guess it's like 10 times more powerful than morphine, but that's also the reason they don't prescribe it is because, lethal doses like micrograms. It'd be pretty easy to mess up, but they're still using it as like, I guess like a base compound to like adjust and change, but it's a really interesting toxin, a little bit different than a lot of the other darts.
Yeah. It's interesting that we find things like that in the animal kingdom that really influence medicine. It's really cool.
It is really cool. Yeah, a lot of poisons, a lot of like snake venoms as well, or like base molecules or whatever for different treatments for all sorts of diseases. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
This thing that people are afraid of that think like, oh, this is deadly, like, oh, this could be the cure for like Alzheimer's or you know.
Yep. Really cool. All right. Thanks for educating us and dropping some wisdom on us when it comes to Epipedobates. I want to do a lightning round. I'll give you a question. Give me the first thing that comes to your mind. If nothing comes to your mind, we can pass and move on to the next question. So, if money and space were no issue, what is your dream pet that you would have? Money, space, and legal issues were no issues. What's the one pet that you would have?
This is the slowest lightning strike ever. I forgot what I said last time, but I really like tortoises. Tortoises are cool, like a big Galapagos tortoise or a whole bunch of them. I think that'd be pretty sweet.
That would be sweet. You'd also have to have climate is no issue as well too.
Yeah, we got to make a few. Yeah, we got to make a few qualifiers, but
yeah, cool.
Give me my Galapagos tortoises.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. All right, in all the Earth, your favorite animal or plant or bug? What's your favorite living thing on planet Earth right now?
Oh man,
like, what's the
last time
coolest?
I said Magic Mike.
Yeah.
And he unfortunately passed, so
Yep.
I don't know if I want to pick a specific animal. I might just be really unlucky, but I've been doing a lot of herping recently, and one of my favorite finds so far was the spotted turtle.
Oh, cool.
That was really sweet. Blue racer was pretty cool too. Those
Yeah.
guys are pretty feisty, pretty quick.
Cool.
Probably one of those two have been my favorite finds recently, so we'll go with that.
Cool. All right. What's another business in our hobby that's either producing really cool animals or producing really cool products, or an influencer that's doing really cool stuff, creating really cool media? Like, who's somebody in our hobby that you're like, oh man, this person or this company is really cool?
Yeah, I think I'll shout out my friend Sam, Natural Tanks that we work with in Panama. He's got a lot of really cool Vicente, a lot of cool obligates, a lot of cool tree frogs as well, but a lot of really unique, rare morphs of the Vicente that we're slowly starting to work with, like yellows, mochachinos, reds, all sorts of really cool stuff.
That's cool.
The blue and green ones. Yeah, we had a lot of cool ones. We actually started breeding our the blue-green Vicente. Got some babies now, so
cool.
Shout out to him.
Cool. All right. If you have an hour of free time, what are you doing? No one's bothering you. You can do whatever you want. No obligations. What are you doing with that hour of free time?
So I made it my new life goal to try and find one of every Michigan native reptile and amphibian.
Oh, wow.
So for the last like 2 or 3 months, every weekend I go out to a different place and I look for different reptiles and amphibians. Right now, I believe I'm at 31 out of 56-ish.
Oh, wow.
So we made some pretty good progress, but pretty much any time, even like an hour. Like there's like a bayou area in Shiawassee County that you can find the eastern fox snake. I haven't found it yet, but like I'll drive out there if I got time. But that's been a lot of fun, kind of exploring different places I've never been to, trying to find things I've never found before. It's been really enjoyable.
That's cool. All right, last question. You have a bunch of people listening to you. What's one piece of advice you would give them? Either something encouraging them to do, the advice that you would give them, or some type of a reminder that you would give people as they're listening. What's one piece of advice?
Yeah, so last time we gave some advice that was more like, I don't know, philosophical, but this is relevant to me and probably relevant to a lot of you guys. But if you're out there in the woods, herping, birding, what is mycology called? Like shrooming? That sounds kind of sus, but and you come out of the woods, ticks are a thing.
Yeah.
So if you see a tick, I learned this recently because I had to go through it. It was not an enjoyable experience, but if you have a tick like attached to you, you can go to the clinic immediately, especially if you even bring the tick, like put it on some tape or something. They'll give you a dose of like, I think it's doxycycline or whatever, which will get rid of whatever, like Lyme disease or whatever before it pops up. I had one on me and I was like, oh, this will, I'll see if I get symptoms or whatever. I got symptoms. It wasn't fun. I had to go through like more of the, I guess, antibiotics, and had a huge like bullseye on it. It wasn't fun.
Gosh.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners are, outdoorsy people. Yeah. Take care of yourself, check for the ticks. And if you have one on, you can go immediately and get it taken care of. I would recommend anybody to do that because having it's not that fun.
Cool.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, surprisingly not that fun.
Cool.
Cool.
Lime. I thought it'd be like a margarita or something. No, it's not fun.
All right, Jake, thanks for dropping some wisdom on us and helping us educate people on taking care of these cool animals. Jake's done some other videos for us and done a bunch of other work. So check him out on across all of our channels. But thanks a lot for educating us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoy this content and want to stay up to date, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us across social media. We always want to bring you the best content, so let us know what you think in the comments. And for all your reptile and amphibian needs, be sure to check us out at joshsfrogs.com. We have an amazing selection. Until next time, stay curious, stay froggy, and keep exploring.